Countdown to Halloween 2022, featuring eerie and uncanny tales of haunts, ghosts, and suspense. Every Monday at exactly midnight, a new story will appear on Storylink Radio's YouTube channel as we count down to Halloween 2022. You will have 7 days to listen, then the next one will appear. Each story will be 13 to 30 minutes long. And now, tonight's story from Storylink Radio. The Hounds of Hell by John Masefield, 1920. About the crowing of the cock, when the shepherds feel the cold, a horse's hoofs went clip-a-clock along the hangman's wold. The horse hoofs trotted on the stone, the hoof sparks glittered by, then a hunting horn was blown, and the hounds broke into cry. There was a strangeness in that horn, a wildness in the cry, a power of devilry forlorn exulting bloodily, a power of night that ran a prey along the hangman's hill. The shepherds heard the spent buck bray and the horn blow for the kill. You heard the worrying of the hounds about the dead beast's bones. Then came the horn, and then the sounds of horse hoofs treading stones. What hounds are these that hunt the night? The shepherds asked in fear. Look, there are calkins clinking bright, they must be coming here. The calkins clinkered to a spark, the hunter called the pack. The sheep-dogs' fells all bristled stark, and all their lips went back. Lord God, the shepherd said, they come and see what hounds he has, all dripping bluish fire and dumb and nosing to the grass, and trotting scatheless through the gorse and bristling in the fell. Lord, it is death upon the horse, and they are the hounds of hell. They shook to watch them as they sped, all black against that sky, a horseman with a hooded head and great hounds padding by. When daylight drove away the dark, and the larks went up and thrilled, the shepherds climbed the world to mark what beast the hounds had killed. They came to where the hounds had fed, and in that trampled place they found a peddler lying dead, with horror in his face. Now there was a farmer on the wold where all the brooks begin. He had 1,000 sheep from fold out grazing on the wind. That next night, as he lay in bed, he heard a canter come trampling the wold top with a tread that sounded like a drum. He thought it was a post that rode, so tuned him to his sleep. But the canter in his dreams abode like horse hoofs running sheep. And in his dreams a horn was blown, and feathering hounds replied, and all his wethers stood like stone in rank on the hillside. Then, while he struggled still with dreams, he saw his wethers run before a pack cheered on with screams, the 1,000 sheep as one. So, leaping from his bed in fear, he flung the window back. He heard a death horn blowing clear, and the crying of a pack, and the thundering of 1,000 sheep, all mad and running wild to the stone pit 7 fathoms deep, whence all the town is tiled. And after them came the hounds of hell, with hell's own fury filled. Into the pit the wethers fell, and all but 3 were killed. The hunter blew his horn a note and laughed against the moon. The farmer's breath caught in his throat. He fell into a swoon. The next night, when the watch was set, a heavy rain came down. The leaden gutters dripped with wet into the shuttered town. So close the shutters were, the chink of lamplight scarcely showed. The men at fireside heard no clink of horse hoofs on that road. They heard the creaking hinge complain, and the mouse that gnawed the floor, and the limping footsteps of the rain on the stone outside the door. And on the wold the rain came down till trickles streaked the grass. A traveler riding to the town drew rein to let it pass. The wind sighed in the fir tree tops, the trickles sobbed in the grass, the branches ran with showers of drops. No other noise there was. Till up the wold the traveler heard a horn blow faint and thin. He thought it was the curlew bird lamenting to the wind. And when the horn blew again, he thought an owl hallooed, or a rabbit gave a shriek of pain as the stoat leapt from the wood. But when the horn blew next, it blew a trump that split the air. and hounds gave cry to an halloo. The hunt of hell was there. Black, said the traveler, black and swift those running devils came, scoring to cry, with hackles stiffed and grin jowls dropping flame. They settled to the sightless scent, and up the hill a cry told where the frightened quarry went, well knowing it would die. Then presently a cry rang out, and a mort blew for the kill. A shepherd with his throat torn out lay dead upon the hill. When this was known, the shepherds drove their flocks into the town. No man, for money or love, would watch them on the down. But night by night the terror ran, the townsmen heard them still. Nightly the hell-hounds hunted man, and the hunter whooped the kill. The men who lived upon the moor would waken to the scratch of hounds' claws digging at the door or scraping at the latch. And presently no man would go without the doors after dark, lest hell's black hunting horn should blow, and hell's black bloodhounds mark. They shivered round the fire at home, while out upon the bent the hounds with black jowls dropping foam went nosing to the scent. Men let the hay crop run to seed, and the corn crop sprout in ear, and the root crop choke itself in weed that hell-hound hunting year. Empty to heaven lay the wold, village and church grew green, the courtyard flagstone spread with mold, and weeds sprang up between. And sometimes when the cock had crowed, and the hillside stood out gray, men saw them slinking up the road, all sullen from their prey. A hooded horseman on a black, with 9 black hounds at heel, after the hell hunt going back, all bloody from their meal. And in men's minds a fear began that hell had overhurled the guardians of the soul of man, and come to rule the world. With bitterness of heart by day, and terror in the night, and the blindness of a barren way, and withering of delight. Saint Withiel lived upon the moor, where the peatmen live in holes. He worked among the peatmen poor, who only have their souls. He brought them nothing but his love, and the will to do them good. But power filled him from above, his very touch was food. Men told Saint Withiel of the hounds, and how they killed their prey. He thought them far beyond his bounds, so many miles away. Then one whose son the hounds had killed told him the tale at length. Saint Withiel pondered why God willed that hell should have such strength. Then one, a passing traveler, told how, since the hounds had come, the church was empty on the wold, and all the priests were dumb. Saint Withiel rose at this and said, "This priest will not be dumb. My spirit will not be afraid, though all hell's devils come." He took his stick, and out he went, the long way to the wold, where the sheep bells clink upon the bent, and every wind is cold. He passed the rivers running red, and the mountains standing bare. At last the wold land lay ahead, unyellowed by the share. All in the brown October time he clambered to the weald. The plum lay purpled into slime, and the harvest lay in field. Trampled by many-footed rain, the sunburnt corn lay dead. The myriad finches in the grain rose bothering at his tread. The myriad finches took a shear and settled back to food. A man was not a thing to fear in such solitude. The hurrying of their wings died out. A silence took the hill. There was no dog, no bell, no shout. The windmill's sails were still. The gate swung creaking on its hasp. The pear splashed from the tree. In the rotting apple's heart the wasp was drunken drowsily. The grass upon the cartwheel ruts had made the trackways dim. The rabbits ate and hopped their scuts. They had no fear of him. The sunset reddened in the west. The distant depth of blue stretched out and dimmed. To twiggy nest the rooks in clamor drew. The oak wood in his mail of brass bowed his great crest and stood. The pine tree saw Saint Withiel pass. His great bowl blushed like blood. Then tree and wood alike were dim. Yet still Saint Withiel strode. The only noise to comfort him were his footsteps on the road. The crimson in the west was smoked. The west wind heaped the rack. Each tree seemed like a murderer cloaked to stab him in the back. Darkness and desolation came to dog his footsteps there. The dead leaves rustling called his name. The death moth brushed his hair. The murmurings of the wind fell still. He stood and stared around. He was alone upon that hill, on devil-haunted ground. What was the whitish thing which stood in front with one arm raised, like a death a-grinning in a hood? The saint stood still and gazed. "What are you?" said Saint Withiel. "Speak." Not any answer came, but the night wind making darkness bleak, and the leaves that called his name. A glow shone on the whitish thing. It neither stirred nor spoke. In spite of faith, a shuddering made the good saint to choke. He struck the whiteness with his staff. It was a withered tree. An owl flew from it with a laugh. The darkness shook with glee. The darkness came all round him close and cackled in his ear. The midnight, full of life none knows, was very full of fear. The darkness cackled in his heart that things of hell were there, that the startled rabbit played a part and the stoat's leap did prepare. Prepare the stage of night for blood, and the mind of night for death, for a spirit trembling in the mud and in agony for breath. A terror came upon the saint. It stripped his spirit bare. He was sick body, standing faint, cold sweat and stiffened hair. He took his terror by the throat and stamped it underfoot. Then far away the death horn's note quailed like a screech owl's hoot. Still far away that devil's horn its quavering death note blew, but the saint could hear the crackling thorn that the hounds trode as they drew. "Lord, it is true," Saint Withiel moaned, "and the hunt is drawing near. Devils that paradise disowned, they know that I am here. And there, O God, a hound gives tongue in great hound's quarter dim." The saint's hands to his body clung. He knew they came for him. Then close at hand the horn was loud, like Peter's cock of old, for joy that Peter's soul was cowed and Jesus' body sold. Then terribly the hounds in cry gave answer to that horn. The saint in terror turned to fly before his flesh was torn. After his body came the hounds, after the hounds the horse. The running crackled with the sounds of fire that runs in gorse. The saint's breath failed, but still they came. The hunter cheered them on, even as a wind that blows a flame in the vigil of St. John. And as St. Withiel's terror grew, the crying of the pack bade nearer, as though terror drew those gripped teeth to his back. No hope was in his soul, no stay, nothing but screaming will to save his terror-stricken clay before the hounds could kill. The laid corn tripped, the bramble caught, he stumbled on the stones. The thorn that scratched him to his thoughts was hell's teeth at his bones. His legs seemed bound as in a dream. The wet earth held his feet. He screamed aloud as rabbits scream before the stoat's teeth meet. A black thing struck him on the brow. A blackness loomed and waved. It was a tree. He caught a bough and scrambled up it saved. Saved for the moment, as he thought. He pressed against the bark. The hellhounds missed the thing they sought. They quartered in the dark. They panted underneath the tree. They quartered to the call. The hunter cried, "You're dead, go see." His death horn blew a fall. Now up, now down, the hellhounds went with soft feet padding wide. They tried, but could not hit the scent, however hard they tried. When presently the horn was blown, the hounds were called away. The hoof-beats glittered on the stone and trotted on the brae. The saint gat strength, but with it came a horror of his fear, anguish at having failed, and shame, and sense of judgment near. Anguish at having left his charge, and having failed his trust, at having flung his sword and targe to save his body's dust. He clambered down the saving tree. "I am unclean," he cried. "Christ died upon a tree for me. I used a tree to hide. The hellhounds bayed about the cross and tore his clothes apart, but Christ was gold and I am dross, and mud is in my heart." He stood in anguish in the field. A little wind blew by. the dead leaves dropped, the great stars wheeled their squadrons in the sky. "Lord, I will try again," he said. "Though all hell's devils tear, this time I will not be afraid, and what is sent I'll dare." He set his face against the slope until he topped the brae. Courage had healed his fear, and hope had put his shame away. And then far off a quest note ran, a feathering hound replied. The hound still drew the night from man along that countryside. Then one by one the hell hounds spoke, till the horn made cheer. Then full the devil chorus woke to fill the saint with fear. He knew that they were after him to hunt him till he fell. He turned and fled into the dim, and after him came hell. Over the stony wold he went, through thorns and over quags. The bloodhounds cried upon the scent, they ran like running stags. And when the saint looked round, he saw red eyes intently strained, the bright teeth in the grinning jaw, and running shapes that gained. Uphill, downhill, with failing breath, he ran to save his skin, like one who knocked the door of death, yet dared not enter in. Then water gurgled in the night, dark water lay in front, the saint saw bubbles running bright. The huntsman cheered his hunt. The saint leaped far into the stream and struggled to the shore. The hunt died like an evil dream, a strange land lay before. He waded to a glittering land, with brighter light than ours. The water ran on silver sand by yellow water flowers. The fishes nosed the stream to rings as petals floated by. The apples were like orbs of kings against a glow of sky. On cool and steady stalks of green the outland flowers grew. The ghost flower, silver like a queen, the queen flower streaked with blue. The king flower, crimson on his stalk, with frettings in his crown. The peace flower, purple from the chalk, the flower that loves the down. Lilies like thoughts, roses like words, in the sweet brain of June. The bees there, like the stalk dove birds, breathed all the air with croon. Purple and golden hung the plums, like slaves bowed down with gems the peach trees were. Sweet-scented gums oozed clammy from their stems. And birds of every land were there, like flowers that sang and flew. All beauty that makes singing fair that sunny garden knew. For all together sang with throats so tuned that the intense color and odor pearled the notes and passed into the sense. And as the saint drew near, he heard the birds talk, each to each, the firebird to the glory bird. He understood their speech. One said, "The saint was terrified because the hunters came." Another said, "The bloodhounds cried and all their eyes were flame." Another said, "No shame to him, for mortal men are blind. They cannot see beyond the grim into the peace behind." Another sang, "They cannot know unless we give the clue, the power that waits in them below the things they are and do." Another sang, "They never guess that deep within them stand courage and peace and loveliness, wisdom and skill of hand." Another sang, "Sing, brothers, come, make beauty in the air. The saint is shaen with martyrdom beyond his strength to bear. Sing, brothers, every bird that flies." They stretched their throats to sing with the sweetness known in paradise when the bells of heaven ring. "Open the doors, good saint," they cried. "Pass deeper to your soul. There is a spirit in your side that hell cannot control. Open the doors to let him in, that beauty with the sword. The hounds are silly shapes of sin, they shrivel at a word. Come, saint." And as they sang, the air shone with the shapes of flame. Bird after bright bird glittered there, crying aloud they came. A rush of brightness and delight, white as the snow and drift, the firebird in glory bright, most beautiful, most swift, sweeping aloft to show the way, and singing as they flew, many and glittering as the spray when the windy seas are blue. So cheerily they rushed, so strong their sweep was through the flowers. The saint was swept into their song and gloried in their powers. He sang and leaped into the stream and struggled to the shore. The garden faded like a dream. A darkness lay before. Darkness, with glimmery light forlorn and quavering hounds in quest. A huntsman blowing on a horn, and lost things not at rest. He saw the huntsman's hood show black against the graying east. He heard him holloa to the pack and horn them to the feast. He heard the bloodhounds come to cry and settle to the scent. The black horse made the hoof casts fly as sparks flashed up the bent. The saint stood still until they came, baying to ring him round. A horse whose flecking foam was flame and hound on yelling hound, and jaws that dripped with bitter fire snarled at the saint to tear. Pilled hell hounds balder than the gyre leaped round him everywhere. Saint Withiel let the hell hounds rave. He cried, "Now in this place climb down, you huntsman of the grave, and let me see your face. Climb down, you huntsman out of hell, and show me what you are. The judge has stricken on the bell, now answer at the bar." The baying of the hounds fell still, their jaws salt fire died. The wind of morning struck in chill along that countryside. The blackness of the horse was shrunk, his sides seemed ribbed and old. The rider, hooded like a monk, was trembling with the cold. The rider bowed as though with pain, then clambered down and stood, the thin thing that the frightened brain had fed with living blood. "Show me, what are you?" said the saint. A hollow murmur spoke.
"This, Lord,"
It said. A hand moved faint and drew aside the cloak. A woman death that palsy shook stood sick and dwindling there. Her fingers were a bony crook, and blood was on her hair. "Stretch out your hands and sign the cross," was all St. Withiel said. The bloodhounds moaned upon the moss. The woman death obeyed. Whimpering with pain, she made the sign. "Go, devil hell hag," said he, "beyond all help of bread and wine, beyond all land and sea, into the ice, into the snow, where death himself is stark. Out with your hounds about you, go, and perish in the dark." They dwindled as the mist that fades at the coming of the sun. Like rags of stuff that fire abrades, they withered and were done. The cock that scares the ghost from earth crowed as they dwindled down. The red sun, happy in his girth, strode up above the town. Sweetly above the sunny wold the bells of churches rang. The sheep bells clinked within the fold, and the larks went up and sang. Sang for the setting free of men from devils that destroyed. The lark, the robin, and the wren, they joyed and overjoyed. The chats that harbor in the wind, their little sweet throats swelled. The blackbird and the thrush joined in, the missel thrush excelled. Till round the saint the singing made a beauty in the air, an ecstasy that cannot fade, but is forever there. You've just heard tonight's story from Storylink Radio's Countdown to Halloween 2022. Remember to come back for our next tale. Many more stories of all genres available to listen to and read along with now on our website at www.storylinkradio.com. Visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/storylinkradio. And visit our podcast for easy mobile listening anywhere, anytime. Just search for Storylink Radio on your favorite podcast provider. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click that alert bell for Storylink Radio.